The lawn care industry spends a great deal of money convincing people that maintaining a good lawn requires their products. I have watched beautiful, thick, green lawns maintained for generations without a single one of those products. What those lawns have had instead is attention, patience, and the understanding that the ground is not a surface to be managed. It is a living system to be tended. I hope something I have shared today is useful to you. I believe it will be. The ground has always rewarded patience and attention more than it has rewarded spending. Thank you for listening. If you have questions about any of what I have shared, please leave a comment below. I read what people write. I will answer when I can. I believe these principles will help you if you give them time, because they are not new ideas that I invented. They are old ideas proven across many generations of people who depended on the ground and who understood that the land rewards patience and attention more than it rewards spending. Give this a thumbs up if something I said was useful to you, and consider subscribing if you would like to hear more of what I have learned about working with the land, rather than against it. I want to give you one practical example of what reading the ground looks like in practice. Some years back, there was a corner of our yard where the grass thinned every summer without fail. We tried seeding it. The new grass would establish, and by the following summer, it would be thin again. Instead of fertilizing more heavily, we looked at what was actually happening. The soil felt harder than the surrounding area. Water pooled there briefly after rain before soaking in. The compaction was the problem. We aerated that corner by hand with a garden fork, worked in some compost, and seeded with a mix that included clover and yarrow. The following summer, the corner held. We had addressed what the corner was telling us rather than applying a general remedy to a specific condition. Plantain tells you the soil is compacted. Moss tells you it is too wet and acidic. Clover, as I said before, tells you the soil is low in nitrogen. Reading these signals and responding to their cause, rather than suppressing the symptom, is the core of what my tradition has always called tending. I want to say one last thing before I go. I want to share something that is harder to put into practical terms, but I think it is the thing that underlies all of the practical principles I have described. In my tradition, the relationship between a person and the land they tend goes deeper than efficiency. We do not tend the ground only because it is the most practical way. We tend it because we believe the ground responds to how it is treated in a way that reflects the attention and care brought to it. I understand this is not the kind of thing a science paper can measure, but I have seen it in practice too many times to dismiss it. A yard managed with attention, where the person who mows it actually looks at what they are mowing, notices what is growing and what is not, responds to what they observe, rather than following a fixed schedule, that yard over time becomes what it is capable of being. A yard managed with products but without real attention tends to slowly decline, because the underlying system is never actually being tended. It is being maintained. There is a difference between maintenance and tending, and that difference is attention. My grandmother used to say that a garden knows when it is loved. I do not know exactly what she meant by that, but the yards I have seen that were most alive and most beautiful were almost always tended by people who paid close attention to them, not people who spent the most money on them. None of what I have described requires purchasing anything. I want to tell you about one season specifically, because it might help you understand what the transition period feels like and why it is worth continuing through it. The first spring after we stopped using synthetic fertilizer on a section of our yard, the grass looked pale compared to the neighbors. It was thin in places. Clover was coming in more strongly, which we welcomed. By midsummer, the grass was holding its green color through a dry July that had the neighbor's lawn brown and stressed. By fall, the soil under our hands felt more alive than it had before. The following spring, the grass came in fuller and darker without any input from us beyond mowing high and leaving the clippings. By the third year, we had the lawn I remember from my childhood. Not a lawn produced by a schedule and a product. A lawn that was simply alive. The clippings are free. The patience to cut high is free. The clover that comes on its own is free. The willingness to let the lawn rest in summer is free. The attention required to read the ground and respond to what it tells you is free. The one purchase that I would recommend is a thin layer of finished compost spread across your lawn in early fall, which is inexpensive if you can find a local source or make it yourself, which we have done for as long as I can remember. And when it begins to look like it is telling us something, when it takes on a bluish-gray color, and when you walk across it and your footprints do not spring back the way they usually do, that is when we know it needs water. And when we water deeply, not for 15 minutes, for an hour, long enough for the water to go down past the top inch of soil, down past 2 inches, down to where the roots are, and past where the roots are, so they will follow the water down. This is the principle that makes the most difference in how a lawn behaves in summer. Grass that has been watered deeply and infrequently all spring has roots that have followed the water downward throughout the growing season. Those roots can find moisture well below the surface when the dry weather comes. Grass that has been sprinkled lightly every day has roots that stay near the top because the top is always moist and there is no reason to go deeper. When the dry weather comes, those shallow roots run out of moisture in days. I will tell you something that might surprise you. We often allow our cool season grass to go brown and dormant in the heat of summer. The grass looks dead. It is not dead. There is a practice I want to mention here, which is the annual compost top dress. In early fall, when the nights have begun to cool and the cool season grass is waking up from its summer rest, we spread a thin layer of finished compost across the lawn surface. The thickness of a quarter coin spread as evenly as we can. This is not incorporated into the soil. It is simply left on the surface. The rain and the earthworms carry it down over the following weeks. This one practice, done consistently every fall, improves the soil structure over time and provides a slow nutritional baseline for the next growing season. It is, in my experience, the single most effective annual practice for improving a lawn over time. It is resting. Cool season grasses have been going dormant in summer heat for as long as there has been cool season grass. They know how to do it. They have been doing it far longer than there have been sprinkler systems. When the weather cools in late summer and the rains return, the grass comes back green and vigorous. Allowing this rest to happen is not a failure of the lawn. It is the lawn doing exactly what it is supposed to do. The fifth thing, and perhaps the most important thing I want to leave you with, is about reading the ground rather than treating it on a schedule. The lawn care industry sells programs. Apply this in spring, this in summer, this in fall, this in winter. Every application is on the calendar regardless of what the ground actually needs or does not need. This is the opposite of tending. Tending is paying attention. Tending is looking at what the grass is showing you and responding to what you see rather than what the schedule says. When grass is thinning in patches, that is the ground telling you something specific about that spot. Maybe the soil is compacted there. Maybe it's too shady now that a tree has grown. Maybe the drainage is poor in that corner. Putting fertilizer on a thinning patch does not fix compaction or shade or drainage. It is the wrong answer to the right question. When moss appears in a spot, that spot is telling you it is too wet or too shady for grass. Moss does not indicate that you need more fertilizer. It indicates that you need to improve drainage or reduce shade, or accept that something other than grass belongs in that spot. When a certain weed thrives consistently in a specific area of your lawn, that weed is telling you something accurate about the soil conditions in that area. The third thing is about feeding the ground, not just feeding the grass. Before I explain this, I want to tell you what my father showed me when I was a boy. He showed me 2 sections of pasture side by side. One cut short, the way the neighbors wanted their yards. One left at the height we kept our grass. Then we had a dry summer. The shortcut section went brown in the first dry week. The high-cut section stayed green for nearly 3 weeks before it began to show stress. Then he took a spade and showed me the roots. The short grass had roots that barely reached the depth of his finger. The high grass had roots past the depth of his hand. He said to me, "The root is the lawn. What you see above the ground is only what the root has decided to show you." I never forgot that. I have shown the same thing to my own children because I think it is the most important thing a person can understand about grass. The products that are sold to feed lawns, the bags of synthetic fertilizer on the shelf, they deliver nutrients directly to the grass plant roots in a form that dissolves in water and can be absorbed immediately. I understand why this seems good. You can see the result in a week. The grass gets green. But what those products do to the soil underneath, to the billions of small organisms living in that soil that are doing the work of making nutrients available naturally, is not good. The salt concentration of synthetic fertilizers is hard on many of those organisms. Over years of application, the soil biology gets weaker and weaker, and as it gets weaker, the grass becomes more dependent on the synthetic input because the natural system that was providing nutrition is no longer as capable as it was. What we do instead is feed the soil with organic material. Finished compost spread thin across the lawn surface once a year. Clippings returned after every mowing. And where we can, clover mixed into the grass. Clover is something that most lawn care programs want to remove as a weed. I want to be very direct about this. Clover is not a weed. Clover is a gift to your lawn. Clover takes nitrogen out of the air through bacteria in its roots and puts it into the soil where the grass growing beside it can use it. A lawn with a reasonable amount of clover, say 15 or 20% coverage, is a lawn that is partially feeding itself with nitrogen that costs you nothing and comes from the air above your head. My grandfather always said that a lawn with clover in it was a sign that the person tending it understood something. A lawn without clover, kept that way by herbicides, was a sign of someone spending money to remove something that was helping them. I thought of that every time I see a lawn care truck spraying to remove clover from a yard. I want to say something about the other plants that come into a diverse lawn. Self-heal is a low-growing plant with small purple flowers that bees love, and it never grows taller than the mowed grass. Yarrow has roots that go deep and break up compacted soil, doing work that would otherwise require machinery. Creeping thyme stays low, smells good when you walk across it, and tolerates heat and drought better than any grass I know. Plantain has a taproot that pulls minerals from deep in the soil up to the surface. A diverse lawn does more work for itself than a single species lawn could ever do. These plants are not competing with your grass. They are helping it. And they arrive on their own, for free, when you stop trying to remove them. The fourth thing I want to talk about is water. I hear people say that leaving clippings causes thatch. I understand why they believe that, because they have been told it many times by people selling products. But it is not true, and I will tell you why. Thatch comes from the roots and stems of grass that break down slowly. Clippings are soft and wet, and they disappear into the ground in days. I have never had a thatch problem on a field where we left the clippings. I have seen thatch on fields where people applied a great deal of synthetic fertilizer and pushed the grass to grow faster than the soil organisms could keep up with. That is where thatch comes from. The second thing I want to share with you is about how high to cut. Before I get to that, I want to add something about clippings. The practice we follow is called cutting no more than a third at a time. If your grass has reached 4 inches, you cut it back to no less than 2 2/3 inches. You never remove more than 1/3 of the blade in a single mowing. When you cut off more than a third, the grass plant goes into shock and stops sending energy to the roots. If your lawn has gotten ahead of you and reached 5 or 6 inches, cut it back in 2 passes, 2 or 3 days apart. This one rule, followed consistently, makes a significant difference in the health of the root system over an entire season. On our farms, on our pastures, on our yard grass, we do not cut short, we cut high, 3 inches, sometimes 4. The grass books and the lawn products always want you to cut short because short grass looks neat in a certain way that has become fashionable. But short grass has short roots, and short roots cannot find water when it does not rain. And when it does not rain for 2 weeks, you will see why short roots are a problem. When you cut grass high, those plants can keep more of their leaf. More leaf means more sunlight captured. More sunlight means more energy sent down to the roots. More energy means the roots go deeper, looking for water and minerals that are further down in the soil. A grass plant that is allowed to grow to 3 or 4 inches before cutting will send roots down 4 to 6 inches into the soil. That same grass plant cut short every week will have roots that barely go past the topsoil. When the dry weather comes, one of those lawns stays green for 2 weeks without rain. The other one starts turning brown in 4 days. I think you know which is which. There is also something else that tall grass does that most people do not think about. It shades the soil. Something I should mention here is the earthworm. My people have always watched the earthworm population in their fields as an indicator of soil health. A field or yard with many earthworms has healthy soil. Earthworms tunnel through the soil and create channels that allow water and air to penetrate deeply. They pull organic material from the surface down into the soil profile and process it into forms that grass roots can access. They do continuously for free what mechanical aerating machines do only temporarily. All of the practices I'm describing build earthworm populations over time. When the earthworms come back to a yard depleted by chemical programs, you can feel the difference. The soil becomes softer. It becomes more alive. Grass kept at 3 inches keeps the soil surface out of the direct sun. That shade keeps the soil cooler. A cooler soil holds its moisture longer. And weed seeds that land on the soil surface cannot germinate as easily in the shade of tall grass as they can in the bare soil between short-cut blades. Cutting high is one of the most effective things you can do against weeds, and it costs you nothing except a small adjustment to your mower. I want to tell you something about grass that I learned from my father, who learned it from his father and his father before him. None of them ever bought a bag of fertilizer. None of them ever ran a sprinkler system. None of them ever hired someone to come and spray their fields and their yards with chemicals. And the grass they grew, the fields they kept, the ground they stood on, was green and thick and alive, in a way that I see very few yards today, no matter how much people spend trying to make them that way. I am not here to tell you that the way you have been doing it is wrong. I am here to tell you that there is another way. Before I go any further, I want to say something about why I believe so strongly in this. I have watched what happened over my lifetime to the lawns and the yards in the towns near where we live. When I was young, most yards had clover and plantain and self-heal mixed in with the grass, and they were green and alive. The grass grew thick without anyone buying anything. People mowed, left the clippings, and the yard took care of itself through most seasons. Then the lawn care industry grew, and the products came, and the spraying started. The companies that sell lawn care products have worked very hard for